Hi, everybody. Mitch Chapman, I'm here. Thanks for joining me today for the security news update for this week. In the Security and Privacy Department, Pennsylvania officials have rebutted claims of voter fraud. It's very close. I'm recording this on the eve of the national election, and there's a lot of stuff going on. And the truth is, it's really hard for people to figure out what to believe and what not to believe. And people tend to believe what they want to believe, which is a problem. Ultimately, it's up to you to figure out what's real and what's not real. And a lot of times it's really hard to figure that out. So, don't assume that anything is real because it kind of coincides with what you believe already. You really need to go off and investigate. And like I said, a lot of times that's really hard to do. In the reference department, we're seeing more details emerge on the Chinese hacks of the Trump and Harris and Schumer and bunch of other politicians, phone hacks. That was a case of Verizon and other carriers getting hacked, including their Wiretap network. So, real problem. And, China obviously wants to know, what these politicians are saying behind the scenes, not what they're saying publicly, because they assume, how do you know a politician is lying? It's because their lips are moving. And I would say that's generally true, independent of which party you're talking about. So, they want to get in, and the easiest way to go do that was to go hack the carriers as opposed to hacking, dozens of different people. In the software and hardware checkout department, Apple is launching what they're calling Apple Intelligence, which is their AI product. They're not launching it in Europe because actually the privacy laws make it a challenge for them to go do what they want to be able to do. So they're not launching it in Europe, as I understand. But I think you can probably think of it as ChatGPT with a fancy Apple S skin on it, because your phone for sure, and even the high-end Macs don't have enough horsepower to do any kind of real AI on it. So you're counting on clusters of computers in the cloud. Now Apple says, "Oh, we harden these computers. We're going to pay $1 million. What is that, like 1 second's revenue or something for them? If you can hack this thing, which is all good. I mean, their security generally is good, so I don't really have any complaints about that. And it'd probably have a really nice user experience because that's what Apple is actually really good at. But will it do anything much more than what you can already do with other large language models? I don't know. We'll see. Next, time for Google to watch its back, because OpenAI has just announced a search engine. And if you think about the whole Google pricing model and revenue model, it's based on the fact that they can show you ads. And if you can then go to OpenAI and buy a subscription for $20 a month or $30 a month and say, answer my question, and it just gives you the answer, and you don't have to go through all these, for example, paid placement that Google has at the top of every page of Google search results, or the ads that are on the websites that you go to, or the ads that are in the side panel of the Google search results. What happens to Google's revenue model? That's a real challenge. I don't have a good answer for Google, and they can't do a Me Too thing, right? Because all they're going to do is cannibalize their own business if they do that. So what's their plan? I'm assuming that those guys are kind of staying up late at night trying to figure out what to do, but I don't see a great answer there other than diversifying to some other business, which historically they've really not done very well at in terms of things that generate revenue. Going back to the Chinese hacking the presidential candidates, DHS is convening a cyber review board. Remember, the cyber review board operates on a short fuse, so we'll hear about what they're recommending, in several months. Obviously won't be in time for the election, but it certainly will be interesting to see what they have to say and what recommendations they have for the next Congress. In the legislative and legal department, Delta is suing CrowdStrike, and CrowdStrike is suing Delta. Delta says, "Gee, you harmed our reputation." CrowdStrike said, "You have crappy IT systems." I think Delta has the harder challenge here because, if you go look at any software license agreement, it says we're not responsible for squat. And to the degree that some court says we are responsible, the most we're responsible for is a tiny little bit of money, like, $1 million in the case of Delta or something like that. On the other hand, CrowdStrike is saying, why exactly, I don't quite get this. Did it take you a week to recover when all the other airlines got back up in a day or two? So it'll be interesting. I predict this will be settled out of court because it's going to be way too embarrassing for Delta to air its dirty laundry, but who the hell knows? In the education department, the California Privacy Protection Agency is warning companies that dark patterns are illegal. As a reminder, dark patterns is something that companies create when they don't want you to do something. So if I sign up for a subscription on the ABC website, and that gives them revenue every month or every year or whatever, they're going to make it very difficult for me to figure out how to unsubscribe because that doesn't help the revenue. That's called a dark pattern, right? The way the law works in California and in other states is that it can't be harder to unsubscribe than it is to subscribe. Well, as many of you have probably figured out, it's typically a lot harder to unsubscribe than it is. And the CPVA says, basically, we're watching you, and we're going to come after you, and they have a pretty big stick, so we shall see. In the breaches department, WikiLeaks got a taste of its own medicine, over 100 gigabytes of emails and chats and internal documents and legal documents, all kinds of stuff about how WikiLeaks operates between 1982 and 2024 became public. We'll see exactly what Julian Assange thinks of freedom of information after all of his dirty laundry gets aired. But nonetheless, it's out there. Next, there's a California court system. San Joaquin County Superior Court went dark after a cyber attack, knocked out the phones. Apparently, courts still use faxes. Knocked those out. Websites, juror reporting sites, e-filing services, credit card, and much more. They are investigating. I'm sure they are investigating. And say this is due to a cyber incident. I'm surprised. Also in California, the Los Angeles Housing Authority confirms that they were breached again. Big organizations, they have $1 billion budget, so they have hackers have a great incentive to go off and do that. They have a lot of sensitive information, and hackers say they stole 891 gigabytes of data. The housing agency says their systems are operational, which just means that the hackers didn't bother to encrypt the data; they just stole it. So both of those are likely true, but I certainly wouldn't trust anything on the system at this point. And continuing on the election theme, and hopefully we'll get over that. We're fast approaching the election, but I am sure there will be a lot more stuff after the election. So anyway, CISA warns of Russian efforts to sow chaos. I think they've done a very good job, and I'm not sure that we haven't been our own worst enemy in that department, but there's a lot of misinformation going on. So don't assume very much of anything is accurate. And election security challenges, we're seeing that all over the country, not the least of which in Colorado. There are a bunch of stuff going on, but the pressure is on, and the more pressure there is, the more mistakes get made. And we talk about a couple of those right now. Next, after China hacks the U.S. telecoms, I talked about a few minutes ago, now they're complaining about us going off and listening. So there's a difference between hacking and listening, right? Listening means you put sensors, in this case, it's sub-ocean buoys that are collecting information from their submarines. They don't like it. And they said, we shouldn't do that. Well, explain to me why it's okay for them to go off and literally hack into our telecom infrastructure, but it's not okay for us to listen. I don't know. And lastly, in the security news bites, the Russians have fined Google 2 decillion rubles. This is like greater than the entire gross national product of the planet, because they blocked some Russian TV sites on YouTube. Well, Google told them to go take a long walk on a short pier. The Pentagon wants a 17-year sentence for Jack Teixeira. He's the guy you may remember in the Massachusetts Air National Guard that decided to share all kinds of very sensitive classified information on Discord to prove what a cool dude he was to his buddies on Discord. We released the information on Iran's playbook, which includes things like AI, not a big surprise, fake hosting sites, and PSYOP, psychological operations, and they're doing a good job of it. The cops are really nervous that data brokers might get regulated and not be able to sell the data that the cops like buying. So they're talking to the CFPB and say, even if we regulate these data brokers so they can't sell stuff, we still want to buy it. So we shall see where that goes in, which side wins on that. And burglars are using Wi-Fi jammers to disable alarms. I would point to, if you use any kind of wireless alarm system, it's not real security. It's just way too easy to disable, unfortunately. And so if you need help figuring that out, let us know. With that, that's all I have for this week. Thanks for listening. If you have any questions, of course, please reach out to us. And until next time, stay safe.